Hello everyone. So the volume on my laptop seems to be behaving itself at the moment, so I'll try and take advantage of this. I want to talk about Christmas in China. So it is December the 27th, 2018, and I've just passed the first Christmas in my life in my 33 years, whereby I've been outside the UK and away from my family for Christmas. Now I anticipated this because it overlapped with the time that I knew I would be in China. Um, and I knew it would be a slightly strange feeling, and indeed it has been. The first thing I would say, I want to break this into kind of two parts, which is my own experience and some of the things that I understand are going on based on what I've read and what I've looked at from other people's experience. So, firstly, it's been a little bit more festive than I expected. What I mean by that is the general Christmas atmosphere of Christmas trees. The sort of stereotypical things we think of with Christmas. I've seen a lot of them. Um, the local shopping centre here in Kaili, which is known as Go Mao, has several very large pink Christmas trees, the same colour as these curtains, and that's quite unusual. Now it seems a bit garish. Actually, it's rather nice. I quite like them. Um, And the interesting thing is every individual shop, this is kind of a quite a fancy mall. Every individual shop has its own Christmas tree, not just one big tree for the whole shopping center, but every single shop. So in a sense, that is over the top and more than what you would find in many city centers in the UK. There's no public tree in the city, but there is, like I say, in the shopping center. And adjacent to that, at a KTV, there's a big blow up Santa sort of climbing up. I've seen blow up Santas in other places. In more local supermarkets, there is a big mannequin Santa playing a saxophone. And there is a theory about this that comes from the time when Bill Clinton visited China in the early 1990s. And of course, Bill Clinton was a saxophone player, or at least that was his hobby. But why that would be connected to Santa, I don't know. I saw that on China Uncensored, by the way. That was one of the theories they came out with. Um, so from that point of view, it's kind of been festive. My students were going to organize a Christmas party, but at the relatively last minute, not the last minute, but the day before, they were told that they had to change it to a fellowship festival because the Christmas part was a bit taboo. Fix my hair there. Um, No, I read a report a while back that there is a general crackdown on Christmas, particularly this year. That's not surprising because the Xi administration is cracking down on a lot of things. It's more authoritarian than it was 5 years ago, so I'm not overly surprised by that. Now, the reasons given are a little bit vague. I've heard people say it's because of the fact that there is this idea that it's overly commercialized. Well, many in the West would probably agree that Christmas in the West is overly commercialized. I mean, I don't like the fact of companies preparing for Christmas way back in July. I think to an extent Christmas is overdone. And I'm no Scrooge, I love Christmas, but I can see where that's coming from. Now, that might be one reason, but I'm not sure about that because the government can benefit from this financially. And I think it varies from province to province. Here in Kaili, I would say the local government's been relatively relaxed. I read that in Langfang City in Hebei Province, there was a total ban on any sort of public Christmas decorations. I was speaking to someone online a while back, and she said that she sent Christmas cards out a few years ago, but that got banned. Now, whether that was mistranslation or not, I don't know. Some of my students have given me not exactly Christmas cards in the Western sense, but little greeting cards with little Christmas trees on them and so on, which is very pleasant. Um, Nevertheless, there is a slight feeling that the authorities are a little bit uneasy about it. In Kylie, I haven't seen an outright ban, but I do think there is a sense, um, a sort of abstract sense that there is an unease from the authorities on this. And I think another reason is it's a Western festival. Um, and I think the third reason is the Christian connotations. Now, I know pagans will say that it was stolen from paganism, but to all extents, extensive purposes, it has become identified with Christianity. Christians themselves will say, "Oh, but it's been overly commercialized. People forget the true meaning of Christmas." Um, so there's sort of this battle over the ownership of Christmas. I think it's such a well-known event that it crosses boundaries. I mean, there are Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs in the UK who celebrate Christmas. In Britain, we're not quite as politically correct as America in this regard. We don't say happy holidays, and I don't think we should, incidentally. I mean, for our Jewish friends, I think happy Hanukkah, but, happy Christmas, Merry Christmas. I never shy away from saying those words. And I don't think anyone should be offended by it. If you're not a Christian or you don't practice Christmas, just take it in the spirit that it is intended. Um, so I don't know. It's a bit of an obscure, a bit of a vague situation. I don't get the impression that it's too hardline here. I think it's relatively open here. But there are, of course, things that you can't experience. I mean, there's no Christmas dinner with turkey. Turkey's almost impossible to buy in China. It's just not a meat that's really eaten here. Duck is widely available, and duck is, I think, especially in the past, in Western cuisine, it was perhaps a Christmas dish. I'm not sure about that, but that's the impression I get. But even every restaurant has Christmas decorations, tinsel, little snowstorms, so it's everywhere. Um, there's sort of an ironic thing here, which I was thinking about now. The idea of it being a Western festival in China, I have absolutely no. I'm fine with that. But there is a sort of irony because sometimes you see with the nature of identity politics in the West these days, if, let's say, a non Chinese person was celebrating Chinese culture, an example being a few years back, there was a young woman who decided to wear a qipao to her prom, young white woman. And she got mercilessly attacked by idiots who were saying she was culturally appropriating China. Well, there's massive cultural appropriation in this country of the Western festival of Christmas, whether it be pagan or Christian. It's a Western festival, and no one cares. I'm certainly not offended. I don't think anyone should be offended, but it's kind of ironic that because the sort of people pushing the oh it's cultural appropriation nonsense, they ignore the fact that China actually culturally appropriates many things from the West. Um, and then many things in the West are made in China, so it's you can't have one without the other, really. So I have a VPN. I've been listening to Christmas songs. I watched the Queen's speech. I don't feel it's been as distant to me as it might have been. I spoke to my family on FaceTime, spoke to my brother and his family on Skype, so I'm not that disappointed. Obviously, there isn't many presents. I got a very nice. It's not with me right now. I got a very nice red scarf from my company. I'm very happy about that. But I can't say I'm overly disappointed. I can't say. I mean, it's different. It is different, and measuring up, I'd prefer to be with my family. But overall, it's a few people said, "Why don't you go back for Christmas?" But I really don't think it's worth getting an airfare just for a short period and then coming back. Um, so that's it, really. That's my experience of Christmas in China. We have to remember that it is a Western festival, so we shouldn't expect it to be the same. We shouldn't expect the Chinese to go out of their way to, accommodate the whole Christmas feeling. I mean, I was working on Christmas Day, but it wasn't a sense of like, oh, I have to work on Christmas Day. I love my job. I love teaching these kids, and they wish me happy Christmas, and I didn't give a big lesson plan on the idea of Christmas because I think there might be some, I wouldn't say rules, but the school might be a little funny if I was overdoing it in terms of telling them what it was all about. But they know that my teachers, my colleagues, I should say, wish me Merry Christmas, and they ask, "Oh, how was it?" and so on. And um, I got incidentally, one colleague got me these little cakes, in fact, right in front of me, from Xiaomen in Fujian province. I'm not sure what they're called. She told me, but I've forgotten. They're very tasty. They're like little pastries filled with a sort of, I don't know what it is, but it's tasty. It's nice. So they're sort of my mince pie substitute. But I have to say, overall, it hasn't been that disappointing. It's been okay. But I think this is something that very much depends where you are in China. If you're in Lanfang City, you're not going to see anything about Christmas, and probably Beijing, Tianjin, places in the north. But it's such a big festival, it's so well known. I think even the Communist Party can't completely eradicate it. As much as they might try, I don't think it's possible because it's just so well known. I mean, it's one of those things, it's like the English language, it cannot be eradicated. It's just, it's known and it's there. And I think the authorities could probably crack down. Incidentally, the Christian connection. Recently, there has definitely been a crackdown on all religious groups in the West on Muslims, and elsewhere in China on Christians. Technically, there are five sanctioned religions, but the government controls it very strictly. For example, they have state-approved churches where churches may be allowed, but they will be handpicked by the Communist Party. Likely, the pastor will be a member of the party, or at least approved by the party, because apparently you cannot be a member and a member of the party and a religious adherent. I asked my colleague, my FAO, who is a member of the party. She told me we were discussing this, and I was obviously being a little bit careful, but she said she was asking me about like religious tolerance in the West. Can people be open and so on? And I asked her, can someone be a member of the Communist Party if they are religious? Clearly, there's a gap there. There's a paradox because the Communist Party is officially atheist. Um, I think it would be a very uncomfortable position to be a practicing Christian or Muslim and be in the Communist Party. It's just, you have a party with atheism at its core. So I don't see how that can work. Um, I think one issue is that the communists are jittery because there's an estimated 100 million Christians in China, and some of them are pretty religious, especially in the south. So anything that challenges the party's dominance is going to be a threat, but they know they can't just outright ban it. They also, it gets into this jingoistic thing of blaming the missionaries for everything. Final point here, there was some very brave missionaries actually. It's very easy these days to bash missionaries and say, oh, they were naive people who were trying to force others to their way of thinking. Not exactly. I think that's an unfair analysis. I think maybe they were naive, but I don't think anyone could question the bravery. I mean, to go to another land, and this is, long before the internet and 24-hour news cycle and all the rest of it. I'm thinking of people like George Hogg and Gladys Aylward. They were brave people, and people before that as well. They were risking death, and they weren't, they weren't trying to convert people at bullet point. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about missionaries generally. And I'm not saying I agree with that approach, but I do think there's misconceptions. Anyway, that's for another video. So, any questions, feel free to ask. That is my personal experience of Christmas in China. And just in case anyone's wondering, I'm not a practicing Christian, but this is just my observations. I'm an agnostic, spiritual agnostic, and I'm interested in deism, but I'm not a practicing Christian and I'm not an atheist either. Okay, let me know your thoughts. Feel free to ask questions.